Hello and welcome back to Big Bad Books, the podcast where I, Isaac, am contractually obliged to read Ready Player 2 until the bitter end. I'm pleased to say, now this is exciting news. Today we cross a threshold unlike any other.
You're not saying we've reached 50%?
Not quite. I'm not saying that. But by the end of the chapter, we will have ticked over, I think, into 50% because the chapter starts at 49%. And
after 8 pages, you're back on 42.
Yeah, if I'll just say this: if at the end of the chapter we're not at 50%, I'm skipping the next chapter, and you have to find out about it yourself.
The podcast is over. You can all just go and buy the book and read it your fucking selves.
Honestly, please.
If we get to the end of the chapter, we're not past 50%, then the show's motto of "we read them so you don't have to" takes a wild turn.
It actually inverts. You have to tell us what happened because I won't read it anymore. But anyway, we're at what the book calls 0013. Hi, I'm Isaac, by the way. This is Declan. Hello.
I'm Declan. Hello.
How you doing?
Not bad. I'm, because I haven't had to read any Ready Player 2.
Yeah. I'm going to say I did quite enjoyed this chapter. I think
was it better than the chapter, I believe it was the last one, where it was just a description of 13 levels of Ninja Warrior, the Ninja Princess, Sega Ninja, Ninja Sega.
Maybe that's what this is, right? Because you and I were always talking about goddamn juxtaposition, aren't we? We're always going on about light and shade and contrast and ups and downs. It fucking rocks. And I guess that's what Ernest has done here. He was like, let me juxtapose one of the most boring chapters ever penned by a person with a perfectly normal chapter that, by contrast, is elevated to the status of, like, I read this and I was weeping. I was like, this is better than Nabokov.
I have a different theory, which
that's
is
fine.
Unfortunately, spoilers alert.
Go on.
For the movie The Prestige.
Oh,
which is, you know how the Christian Bale character, it turns out the way he's able to do his tricks is that, like,
he's magic.
He's a twin.
What?
He's a twin, and his twin does the other half of all the stuff he does. But then what it means is sometimes he's fucking his wife, and sometimes due to work commitments, the twin has to fuck the wife instead. And she's like, "Oh, I could always tell." I think Klein has a twin, and he is contractually obliged to write half the chapters. So he just comes in and is like, level 1 was the frog level 2 was the level where I had to cross the street.
Then it was like Mario.
Klein comes in and, he's just fresh off the back of reading some Keats. Yeah. And he's like ready to bring the lyricism to the story.
The lyricism and the references, I guess, as well.
Yes. Obviously.
The depth of reference.
References.
Let's just very quickly recap the last chapter.
I think I did.
Go on Wikipedia and look up the plot of the game Sega Ninja, and that's it. It was just they have to play that game to get the second shard. They did play the game.
Can I say the only thing I was surprised by, because while you were describing it last time, I will admit that I did stop listening a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, it was just is it
because I was painting such a word picture that you got kind of lost in it?
Was too boring for comprehension.
Oh.
So what I did was I clicked on the Sega Ninja Wikipedia and
you completed it.
What I would say is actually your description of the levels was more exciting than the real pictures of it, because however you were picturing it, it looks worse.
That's cool. It
looks very bad.
So well done, Klein. He's like punched it up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really good. More juxtaposition. The only thing really worth remembering is, well, a couple of things. First of all, our boy Wade, he easily beat this game. There was really no question it was ever going to be hard. No, and I'll tell you what bit of it he easily beat the best was only the hardest bit, the end boss.
You're joking.
He didn't even describe the fight, as I recall. He just beat the end boss.
Some would say it's convenient. Others would say it's only natural.
It's powerful prose, and it's the unexpected choice, which is what I always like about Klein. He always takes you down that road less traveled, because very few writers wouldn't explain, what some would consider the main plot point in that chapter at all. The only other thing of note is that at the end, wow, we've beaten the arcade game. He turned around. Remember, he's in the body of Kira Underwood.
And he was checking out his tits, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. He was checking out Kira up and down. And he turned around, and who did he see coming towards him from the crowd of NPC onlookers?
Was it not a young Ogden Morris?
It was only young Hot Og coming towards him, looking all dashing, I suspect. I don't know. Who would you cast as young Hot Og? Do you see him as an Ezra Miller type?
What? He's got that dog in him.
He's got that beat people up in Hawaii vibe. What they have?
Who is Og in the movie Ready Player One?
Yeah, I think so. Let me look it up right now.
Who plays him?
Who would you guess? Who would you have cast?
I know next to nothing about him.
He's a beautiful old man.
Jim Broadbent.
That's actually such a good shout. I think it's almost certainly worse than that. Let's have a look. They can't have written Og out because he yet does not appear in the top billed cast for some reason. So maybe there wasn't. I'll
so
find
we get
out.
To decide now. We're picking young Og before old Og.
Yeah, which is good, right? Because if you see the Star Wars Academy, that's not what it's called. The Star Wars guys, Disney, that's them. They were like, oh, we realize now we should never cast young actors to play young versions of old characters, which is a real, like, I've not seen Solo, but that feels like such a fuck you to that one guy. It's really mean.
I'm going to say this. So we want someone who's got kind of like young, nerdy energy, but not the charismatic kind, more the sort of like the business side of it kind.
Well, I'm not quite sure. I wonder if it's like a Steve Jobs Wozniak dichotomy, or I wonder because Og is nicer. Like he's a more normal person, I think, than Mark Rylance.
He seems to be hard as nails as well.
Is he?
Because he's withstanding all that torture from the man whose name I can never remember. Who's
Nolan
Sorrento.
Sorrento.
Yeah, that's it. God. So I'm thinking we want someone who you think could sort of like believably grow up to be like a bit hard, but also is maybe sort of like fairly assured, but quite nice.
Is it Ray Winston?
I think to play 12-year-old.
Wait,
I'm thinking. What about Harry Styles?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's super in vogue, right? He's like, his media is taking.
He's literally in vogue. I think
if we could get Harry Styles for this project, I think.
If not, we'll settle for like Zayn Malik.
We'll get anyone from One Direction.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be huge, actually. I'm still trying to find who played. Oh, wow! You'll truly in a million years never guess who it was. It was Simon Pegg, played Ogden Morrow, who I think inhabits none of the qualities you described.
Wow. If I were Harry Styles and I grew up to look like Simon Pegg, I'd be deeply disappointed.
No offense, Pegg. He's got a nice speaking voice.
Simon. Yeah, and I don't know, he's got that kind of cheeky, chappy quality.
Yeah,
So who could play it? Who could play young Pegg? Probably, no, there's no one.
The little boy who was the little boy in Son of Rambo, but like the lead one, not Will Poulter, who went on to be very successful.
I was going to say, I think Will Poulter is probably who I was thinking of, to be honest.
I think Will Poulter's a bit hench to be a young Pegg.
He is now, but he wasn't before. So he just
maybe we can starve him. We can do the old Hollywood starve.
We Christian Bale him.
Fuck that. Yeah. Okay, I can't remember what we were talking about there.
He turns up. He's there, isn't he? Og. He's right there.
And we're going to pick up. We're going to pick up, like you can imagine. There's a lot going on here. I'm sure you'll agree. Kira, because Wade is sort of like possessing her, like a demon might possess a Catholic schoolgirl in any number of horror films from the 1980s. And what I think Wade is experiencing is like he's aware of what Kira's feelings are in these moments, but then on top of that, he's also got all his Wade feelings. It must be difficult, don't you think?
It's hugely difficult. And
have you got a lot of empathy for Wade?
Oh, sorry, none.
Oh, okay.
None.
Just to check in.
He might be the least empathetic character in any major work of fiction. Like, at least with Harry Potter, you were a bit like he has had it a bit shit, hasn't he?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Wade, you say that, but Harry Potter, none of his aunts ever got crushed.
One of them got blown up.
Yeah, she just floated around for a bit. That's a treat. I call that an aunt's delight.
But like, I suppose what you could say is that it was his fault that she got crushed. What I'm saying is he killed his aunt.
Yeah.
Well, and then his only response was to fill a doll with so much cum as for it to warrant a mention.
And then fill a spaceship with self-same.
At least 1 reviews on Goodreads. So I don't really have a lot of sympathy for
That's fair.
him.
I mean, to each their own. I
certainly can't empathise because I haven't had any aunts crushed by Caravan.
Not yet.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah,
fingers crossed.
Not yet.
Og looked like he was around. Oh, go on.
Sorry, just one question. I didn't mean to interrupt. I meant to say it earlier. He hasn't got the shard yet. Is that right?
Hasn't got the shard yet. No. He was expecting, hang on, I've just easily beaten this game.
Isaac, you were doing a little wry smile. You're not saying that this is a thread that's going to be picked up by the chapter, are you?
I don't know. Let me say this. If you're a Shard fan, this one's for you. This one's going out to you. For all my Shard heads out there.
I actually am a Shard head, yes.
Get the bingo cards out. It's just the numbers
I'm
1 to 7.
I'm a Hammerhead Shard, baby. Let's go.
Og looked like he was around 16 years old, about the same age he was when he met Kira for the first time at a local arcade when she moved to Middletown in the summer of 1988.
And is that Middletown, Ohio?
Yeah, familiar. Yeah, it is. They're very same.
Why does Wade know so much about what 16-year-old boys look like?
Well, Wade used to be 16. He's got to have studied.
I mean, didn't we all? But,
if you're a gunter, you have to know exactly what age a teenager is, so they can't do you for it because they're all people who push the law to the very limits of acceptability.
Yeah. Well, I suppose, that is one way of looking at it. Do you think he had similar knowledge of how old Kira was in this?
He knew straight away.
Just by checking
out... He took inventory and that was it. He knows. He knows, but like if someone tells you their age, you know what their age is. But Wade knows it on a level that you and I could not comprehend.
A spiritual level almost.
It's a visceral level. He knows it in his bones. Yeah. He knows it in his marrow.
Viscera, that's just the dirty spirit, isn't it? That's what they say.
He is the wet, goopy spirit. Yeah. So Middletown, Ohio was where they met. No wonder this setting and this is so good. Okay, so we are 5 lines into this chapter, and already Klein is reaching into the old. I mean, not even his back pocket. He's looking 1 centimeter down from wherever he normally looks to find the big box or the big button that he's got labeled retcon to just suddenly instill the fact that Wade's finding out new knowledge, but he knew the knowledge already. It's new knowledge in scare quotes. I mean, the details. I mean, fuck them.
Come on.
No wonder this setting and scenario I was acting out both felt so familiar. I'd read about it 7 or 8 years earlier in Ogden Morrow's best-selling autobiography, Og. Why bother specifying its name if that's as good as it gets?
Cunt. You stupid cunt, Klein. You are a waste of space.
I have 3 questions about this sentence.
I was so hoping for some kind of pun.
Yeah, just anything.
You could have been yesterday, today, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Anything. No, Og.
First observation is just how egregious. He seems to be getting more, like a serial killer becomes empowered over time when they're not caught. He's taunting us with how overt the fucking deployment of this method is. The old Klein surprise. Wade found out something new, but it didn't matter because he super knew it already.
Wade is becoming more convenient by the day.
Also just the gap between him finding something out and finding out that he knew it already is shrinking to the point that it's going to be imperceptible for the reader.
What's going to happen is that in this chapter he's going to know the something other way. That's going to happen in the future.
That Doctor Who episode, the good Doctor Who episode that I really like. Do you know the one I mean? It's a story, Midnight it's called.
I thought the one you liked was the one where people started repeating themselves.
That's it, yes. But the way it works is first of all, the person repeats and then they're simultaneous and then she says it first. It's a cool idea. It's a cool classic sci-fi idea.
Yeah,
maybe that's what he's playing with.
Yeah, he's going to be in a situation where he's sort of thinking about oh my God, and I had to enter the password and I didn't know what it was, but then I remembered, of course, the password was Morrow, because in the next chapter he tells me that the password was Morrow.
He's going to get so good at retconning, he's going to realize he's in a book.
Yeah.
That would be a wild turn if in Ready Player 2 Wade starts directly addressing the reader.
Of course, I read it 7 or 8 chapters ago.
In the book I'm in, Ready Player 2. I read it in 0007.5, level 4.
I remember they deleted this guy for the Ready Player 1 movie.
Now, the vibe here is he's just describing the information that he's already kind of told us, but in more detail that frankly serves no purpose other than to just plaintively justify that, oh no, look, this is new. We didn't know, for example, before that Og thought she was a, quote, unbelievably gorgeous girl. I'm glad we got that little snippet from the diary.
Previously we thought he married her, even though he thought she was very plain.
Yeah, it plays the exact same card here when it's like, it said she was hot. It said they met in an arcade and she was playing, quote, one of the toughest games there. But Og had never bothered to specify which local arcade it was, or the name of the game Kira had played, and other accounts had given conflicting information. But now I knew.
I'd never before heard of Middletown, Ohio. Until now my favourite place.
Now I knew he'd met Kira here at Happy Time Pizza, and that the game he'd watched her beat with 1/4 was Sega Ninja, aka Ninja Princess. Every time he mentions it, he has to specify that there are other names.
I can't remember if I said this last time, but every time he says Happy Time Pizza, I think it's the place from Pizzagate where they had all the paedophiles in the basement.
Comet
Pizza, that's the one.
He didn't capitalize the T in time this time, which is interesting. So it was just like Happy Time Pizza. Like maybe time modifies pizza rather than happy.
Yeah.
So it is clear now to us, but I guess not fully to client satisfaction. So he does just specify even further. I was reenacting the moment Ogden and Kira Morrow first met. And it's good to have those little, they're almost like annotations, but fuck having to flip to the back or read a footnote. Just put that there to kind of summarize as you go. I have a feeling that when we did GCSE and A-level and university English, if each chapter or even each paragraph had below it a one-sentence summary of what that paragraph was about, well, that would be better for us and better for art.
Maybe they could come with the sort of similes already highlighted.
That'd be so bad.
And the references, of course.
Yeah,
the references.
Yeah. Well, if it's something complicated like Sega Ninja, Ninja Princess, the Ninja, maybe a Wikipedia link could be sort of written in.
I think we've invented footnotes. We've invented the Arden Shakespeare, but for Klein.
Really good. Now there's an interesting interaction because I guess we're passingly aware of Halliday and Og's relationship. We were talking about it before. I think I described Mark Rylance's Halliday as the weird one, and Og is kind of nerdy, but he's got a bit more about him. He's less driven, I suppose, less single-minded, more able to kind of maintain a conversation. But we haven't seen them as teens palling about. And this sentence that I'm about to read, for any of our sensitive listeners, you might want to just skip ahead a couple minutes here because it's got a swear in it. There's no two ways about it. And
hang on a minute. One of the bad ones.
Well, it's not even that bad. And there have been, they've said the F word in the book before, I think. No. Not often, but I seem to remember there being a F word in there at least once.
I think I'd remember that.
There's something, when I read this part, that just, I don't know, it just hits your ear in a quite unpleasant sort of way. I think you'll see what I mean when I read it.
I'm ready.
Og and Kira, Og has approached Kira, who's just one. And this must be, this takes quite a lot of courage from Og. He's this is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. And she's just shown that she's a master of the thing I love. So we've got that in common. Let me see. Yeah. He walked over to congratulate Kira, but then his socially inept shadow, Halliday, had interrupted them to ask Og for a ride home. This is Wade remembering it from the book. Sorry, I keep getting phone calls. He always waited until the last possible moment to return to his troubled home, so Og knew his friend didn't really want to leave yet. Halliday was attempting to cock-block him. And there was something about that phrase,
what
cock-block, that I didn't like very much.
Not. It's asterisked out, though, right?
I'm really sorry to have to tell you this, because I know you're quite sensitive to this kind of thing. It's the word cock. It's hyphenated, if that's what you were hoping. Cock-block. Is that good or not so much?
That's really not good. Can you just again? I hate to say this because I know that it impinges on everyone's sensibilities.
Go on.
Just read it again. I need that sense of shock again.
He always waited until the last possible moment to return to his troubled home. That's Halliday. So Og knew his friend didn't really want to leave yet. Halliday was attempting to cock-block him. So to sort of block Og's hypothetical, in this case, digital cock. From proceeding any further into this interaction, I guess is what he's saying.
I'll say is I'll say that the reference to the male member, in that sort of way, it is foul. It is obscene.
It's sort of dehumanizing.
It is, but I will also say that it's interesting that he uses that phrase, which I would say that most of polite society has sort of dropped because some have said that it sort of creates a feeling of entitlement to
it was a different
whatever
time,
the cock
though,
was
wasn't
seeking.
It?
Well, it was
Middletown, Ohio.
Middletown, Ohio. It was full get away with anything.
Hi, the teenage Og said. I'm Og, and you're amazing. I can't believe you defeated Sega Ninja on 1 quarter. This is the first time any of us have seen anyone do that. Way to go.
Sorry, so can I just for my safety, because we've already had some filth so far, if the thrust of the chapter is that Wade as Kira has to suck him off to get a shard, I'm turning off.
Here's your shard. Here's your shard, Wade. Og somehow knows that it's Wade piloting Kira.
He does a slow motion wink.
They do a high five, and I think I get the impression it's never really stated. He doesn't sort of pin himself to what is going on here, but it has the War Games energy of.
I was about to ask.
It seems like he has to reenact.
Well, it was only 7 or 8 years ago that he read about this in
so he'll probably know
best-selling autobiography, Og.
Yeah.
So he probably remembers step for step exactly what happened, like a well choreographed dance.
They do a high five, or Og puts his hand out, and Wade this is such a stupid example to have chosen to get across the idea that he's having to think through the interaction, because I think if someone puts their hand up to high five, it's like an automatic process, but Wade is it took a second before I realized he was offering me a high five.
I love the idea that he's doing one of those, what were they called, the pick your story games. What were they
Choose
called?
Your Own Adventure.
Yeah, but no.
Story game.
The ones like the Walking Dead one and the Batman one.
No, the Telltale games.
The Telltale games, where Olga's got his hand up and Wade's got this there's 4 choices in front of him, just slap hand, go low, walk away, flash. Those are his 4 options.
This is a great sentence. So, they high five and then they sort of lock eyes, and Wade feels, I guess, Kira's heart start to beat faster. But, it's kind of mixing up. Once again, he's playing with
whose heart is it? Whose heart is it really?
Person.
Whose whole body is it? Because Wade owns
Wade's. He owns everything.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
It's not called the Oni for nothing. Here's just a really shit sentence. My skin began to tingle with what felt like invisible tendrils of electricity. When I feel things, I don't have a sense of their visibility.
But you're saying
that's to do with seeing.
You're saying it wasn't visible tendrils of...
No, well, it felt like invisible tendrils. Maybe it was visible tendrils of electricity.
Yeah, it felt like invisible tendrils, but I could see them.
They were blue. There were 8 of them. Tiny they were.
That's the same school as I could almost taste
the of shit writing. And then he follows up, doubling down with, this was a sensation I was familiar with. Just in case you read that and you're like, that's weird. That doesn't describe human experience. And then he's like, no, I have this all the time. And it is you, reader, who are wrong. So he thinks a little bit about what Og, because we remember Og's already got this second shard. So Og's already done all this. And he's like, wow, this must have been weird for Og. And he's like, the only upside of it is that he's only using one of those.
This must have been weird for Og when he had to suck himself up to get this shard.
Yeah, it must have.
No wonder he's refusing to cooperate with it anymore. He fears for his very mind.
Og, it says at least he'd been spared all the physical sensations, which does seem to set that idea up exactly. Because Og is in an old-fashioned rig.
He's a bit like Art Threemis. He doesn't go in the Oni. He just goes to the Oasis, whatever the fuck it's called.
Thanks, Og, I heard myself say with Kira's voice and in her British accent.
Why is she Hermione?
I didn't remember that she was British, so I've really lent into
it. She literally is?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I'm Karen Underwood, but my friends call me Kira. I felt my head nod in the direction of the Sega Ninja cabinet.
Sorry, I thought you were saying she was 16, not 60.
We have this game in one of the shops near my parents' flat, back home in London. But over there, it's called Ninja Princess, not Sega Ninja. Why does he keep doing this? Is it going to be important?
It's a callback, just like Harry Hill does.
It's a callback to 3 paragraphs earlier, which in turn is a callback to a whole chapter, or 2 chapters of equivocating and reiterating that this is I get it. If you tell me this game has multiple names once, I'll remember that.
I remember that, yeah.
And maybe consider you don't need to tell me it even once if it's not.
But it's funny that back in London it's called one thing, and here in Middletown, Ohio, it's called something else.
God, it's just it's a mad world. That's what I feel when I read
what could happen next? It's so funny that
possible.
This is literally a universe in which like, and I don't mean to say this lightly, literally anything could happen.
Yeah.
And we've had 3 chapters about something that already did happen, and it was very boring.
It was boring the first time, and now that we've reimagined it.
It was boring when it happened.
By which I just mean imagined it again.
Yeah, it's very boring when it happened 50 years ago from where we are now.
Yeah.
It's very boring us hearing about it now, and it would be even more boring in another, like, 50 years hence when this is set or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible stuff.
Over there, it's called Ninja Princess, not Sega Ninja. I felt the corner of my mouth curl into a smirk. Then I added, I guess American boys don't like to play with girls. Yes, we do, Og replied immediately. Then he only turns red because he realizes there might be a kind of sex connotation to what he said. I mean, we're not against playing games with girls. Video games, that is. If Og knew the word video, he would have said it there. That have a girl main character like this one here. And then he pats the arcade cabinet, which is an odd thing to do.
Yeah, very strange.
Og is just looking fucking like infatuated.
Do nerds refer? Well, we know they do at least 3 or 4
and they
times.
Strangle with
so
their
I
thighs.
hear. Do they refer to physical video games as women? A bit like. Rich men refer to boats.
I don't know that, but Wade, I know
like,
that.
Yeah, or like they refer to girls like, yeah, she's got 300 horsepower in her, just like, but like just some guy slapping the side
put
of
a whole lot of quarters in her.
in this fine lady,
this sexy little fuck.
I tell you what. This dame and I, we spent more time together than my
shoved my dick up that coin slot so many times it's turned square.
Bobby, you ruined it. Bobby, you ruined it again.
Just goes too far. Now, from what again is just very cinematic sort of framing of this whole thing, like I can't keep saying Mark Rylance. Halliday appears, like 17-year-old Halliday appears like behind Og, and as he does, the arcade sound system skipped forward. Might be some subtext. See if you can analyze it.
Say in our movie version of this, I'm really attached to the idea that Og is played by young Og is played by Harry Styles, but young Halliday is played by like de-aged Mark Rylance. Like they just
not even de-aged, just Mark Rylance in school uniform.
They just looking like the frontman of AC/DC.
That'd be really good. Instruct him not to change his voice.
He's holding a comically large lollipop.
He's like those little lads in the Lollipop Guild. The Lollipop League, my mistake.
Oh, gee, Og, I'm here to cock block you.
The sound system skipped forward from Jesse's Girl, which you may remember was what was playing last time. And I think it had a big connotation that I don't recall. And it's only
It was a reference. That was a reference, let me tell you.
If that was a reference, try this one on for size. It's changed to a song called Obsession by Animotion. And Wade astutely says, I knew that couldn't be a coincidence. And it's that kind of attention to detail that makes Wade the greatest detective in the world.
I knew it couldn't be a coincidence because I'm actually just Ernest Cline and I wrote the book.
If you just write, I knew that couldn't be a coincidence after anything happens in your book, then you get away with it. It's then Wade knew exactly what he needed. I knew it couldn't be a coincidence.
It's literally, it's like someone that we've already spoken about on this podcast, a parallel we've drawn to Cline.
Oh, yeah.
The whole Elon Musk thing today of tweeting in the coming months, people are going to say some very weird things about me, like some bad prediction. They're like, and then strangely, like not but a few hours later, it turns out that there's all these credible sexual assault allegations coming out. Isn't it? Crazy.
It's a coincidence. I knew that couldn't be a coincidence, Wade might say.
Well, he is a prophet. Now, both Wade and Musk, of course.
Og is like, Halliday's trying it again. He's like, oh, take me home, Og. I don't want you to fuck this girl, this Brit.
I want her.
Yeah, that is the vibe entirely.
Yeah.
And Og is like not having it, and fair play to Og here. Like, I think we'll get Harry Styles to do like a little, that little smirk he can do, Harry Styles. And maybe like he'll look down and a bit of long hair will go in his face. And
he's wearing a dress.
And he's wearing a dress. And he says, he's like, let me handle this. And he's like, I'm not driving you home, you fucking dick. I'm trying to talk to this hot Brit.
Yeah.
And he throws a crumpled dollar at Halliday and is like, just change that into quarters and fuck off as effectively as
amazing.
I mean, he's staying cool, right? He's handling it. It's like the equivalent of someone who can shake hands and like pass a tip over, like Richard in Friends.
That's cool. I like that a lot.
It is fucking cool. It's fucking cool.
I didn't realize that about this Og character. Like, that's changed my whole perception.
Yeah, he's a Chad. He should have been called Chog.
He's a Giga Chad.
That should have been his autobiog's name.
And he always refers to himself in the third person.
It should have just been autobiography. Like that was the name. That's such an obvious choice. It took us a total of about 30 minutes of workshopping to come up with about 12 better ideas. No! Halliday shouted, suddenly furious, stomping his foot down like a toddler preparing to throw a tantrum, when his shoe made contact with the ground. Og and all of the other NPCs vanished, leaving me alone with the 17-year-old James Halliday.
That's a terrifying way to phrase that.
Yeah, it is. I was really worried when I read this. Like anti-trigger warning. He's not about to like force Kira into some sort of coercive marriage.
Okay, good.
Not only do the NPCs vanish, and in fact, sort of more importantly than that, the first thing you'd really notice in real life is the next sentence, and in the same instant, our surroundings changed too. So it's less that people vanished and you're left alone with James. It's more that we got teleported to a different place.
Somewhere else, yeah.
And in fact, that is how, like, just, I don't want to labor this point, but if this happened, the experience of it from your perspective is we teleported, not the people vanished.
Everyone disappeared, and you wouldn't believe it. We were somewhere else.
It's really silly. It's just bad. Now, also what happens...
That's actually so criminally stupid.
Yeah, it's quite
so like low key, like just massively dumb. Just like, and then suddenly, what happened was I was standing on the side of the road, and then suddenly, the cars were going the other way, and the houses were behind me. It's just like, oh, you crossed the road. No, you crossed the road. What happened?
And in the same instant, the side of the road I was on changed too. Someone started beeping their horn at me. They have travelled, though their surroundings changed specifically from this beautiful arcade, which is now happy time as one word. And I guess he just types it different each time, which fair play. That's fun.
It's the different brother.
It's the nature of memory as well, isn't it?
It's the other Klein doing it.
That's what Klein's talking about here. They're in the throne room, like they're in a live action version of the boss fight that he previously didn't describe at all. And I guess now you're thinking, okay, this is why, because we're actually going to have this fight again, but now in a kind of metaphorical realm, situated in a live action space.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm so glad you're not going to disappoint me.
Yeah. Well, you're super hyped. The teenage Halliday morphed into the masked, black-clad ninja Kazamaru, who to my eyes, and tell me if you get this, looked exactly like Sho Kosugi in Revenge of the Ninja back in 1983. Do you see that?
Well, that's clarified it. You know when people say "in my mind's eye."
Yeah.
That.
Have you got it in your mind's eye?
That's exactly it.
That's great. Now he looks down at himself again because he just probably wants to check out what's going on, and he's like, "Hang on a minute, I've changed and all. I could see that I was no longer wearing Kira Underwood's face." I hate that sentence, especially when you were driving my body. Yeah, best to ignore that.
That's like serial killer lift, stuff, isn't it?
It's like Hannibal Lecter.
That's really weird. I wasn't wearing her face, and I got me knob back.
No, he didn't. My avatar changed into a live-action representation of Princess Karumi, who is the protagonist of, Sega Ninja? You might know.
I heard it was Ninja Sega.
Also, like, get your mind's eye ready for this one. The creator of this simulation, as well as making them look like Princess Karumi, which I had to stop reading briefly here because it seemed like two different things at the same time. So as well as looking like Princess Karumi, the creator of this simulation had chosen to make me look exactly like Elsa Young in Challenge of the Lady Ninja from 1983.
No.
Remember that one?
No one does.
It's also from 1983 because the other one was 1983 as well.
That's probably maybe this is set in 1983. That's it. When he says whoever made this, are we supposed to believe that it was anyone other than Halliday?
No, don't think so. Okay, I don't know why he's being vague about it because we know. Yeah. I mean, unless there's a twist later on. So
it's all a coma dream.
We've got Halliday, who is now he's the evil ninja. We've got Wade, who is Kira, who is a ninja, who is also a real lady from an actress from a 1983 film. That is quite complicated, kind of metaphysical state of being. We claim her castle and face her imposter, Shoto recited. This is it. Kick his ass, princess. I nodded. And now you're probably hearing like the drums, like if you were scoring.
There's a coliseum kind of rising up.
I nodded, then lunged forward and did as Shoto instructed. I kicked Kazumaru's ass.
Wow. That is good. That is good. Thank God we finally got to see this classic scene. This reminds me of, I think I've said before about on our other podcast, That's a Shame.
Oh, yeah.
You know what That's a Shame.
Is that at shame.city/what? I don't know.
Maybe. Who fucking knows? Yeah, maybe. Like whatever. But when I used to teach English, I had a year 7 class, and I set them a task. We'd studied the poem The Highwayman. And they had to, their little like assessment at the end was that they had a creative writing task where they had to write a letter from the perspective of the highwayman writing to Bess, explaining like, why he's been away, coming up with, excuses, just putting her mind at ease, all this sorts of stuff. And there was one kid who decided, him being a highwayman, the highwayman that is, not the kid.
That'll be a coincidence.
That he was going to write about a big robbery that he'd done. I feel like, he didn't have a lot of respect to this kid for the highwayman because he considered him someone who would just out himself in evidence that anyone could use to prosecute him. But he decided to go for it anyway. And he, started out as, "Dear Bess, hope you're well," all of this, "hope this letter finds you well." And described in like the minutest of detail the king's carriage. He was robbing the king. Like it's a big, that's a big
bust, isn't it?
It was the Ocean's 11 of its day.
Yeah.
And he described in all this detail, the carriage and the horses and the driver and whatnot. And he spent so much time doing that the test was coming to an end. And so he described it all, and then he went, "Anyway, I jumped down and robbed the king. Lots of love from the highwayman."
That's very good.
And I just had to do a lot of some lovely description.
Best love,
interesting pacing.
Yeah, that is very good.
But that's literally this. I looked exactly like this particular ninja from this particular movie, and also strikingly exactly like a different ninja, which does feel a bit racist, if I'm going to say.
Just saying, ninjas are alike.
I looked like this ninja and also looked exactly like this other ninja. Yeah. Here we were going to do it. And so I did.
He was prepared for a brutal fight, but there wasn't one, and he easily beats him, as you come to expect from Wade. But the last sliver of his life bar turned red, but he didn't die. Instead, the manly, black-clad ninja master abruptly fell to his knees and began to cry, then vanished in a cloud of smoke a few seconds later. When it dissipated, I saw the second shard floating there in front of me. This is a great bit of pacing as well, because it feels like he just had other plans.
Yeah.
Like writing this was getting in the way of dinner or something. So he's like, I reached for it. Let's just remind ourselves, the shards are the goal of this narrative. He's been building up to this shard for 2 chapters.
1/7 of the whole thing. And if we think about it another way, it's 1/6 of all that remains.
Yeah. I reached for it, wondering if I was about to experience another flashback, in scare quotes. And as my fingers wrapped around it, he just does experience another flashback.
Oh, that's good.
So we don't actually really get anything about the shard. We don't know how he feels to get it. We don't know, how it feels in his hand.
Right.
We're just straight away yanked into
the flashback.
A little flashback. Now, this flashback's very dull, but he's back inside Kira's body. Og's there.
He can't get enough.
There's a grassy hill. It's moonlight. Yeah. They're overlooking Middletown skyline in the distance. I can't imagine Middletown had much for skyline. And Og is putting a necklace in his hands, or her hands. And he whispers, "I love you," for the first time. Og had written about this moment in his autobiography.
What's that called?
It's called Og, O-G. But he hadn't described it in any detail or given the time and place it occurred, which is a complete just rehash of the thing he said the last time he had an experience. Yeah. I felt my body starting to tremble as Kira reacted to what her future husband had just told her. And then I was back inside my own avatar's skin. So that's the end of the other kind of flashback, I guess. Cool. And we didn't want it to overstay its welcome. We sometimes accuse Brian of waiting for too long.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm glad he didn't do that here.
Indeed.
So in his hand, he has this blue crystal, nearly identical to the first one. Doesn't explain in what way it's not identical. And they're all like, "Oh, yeah, we did it. Great. Why would Halliday want you to kill the teenage version of himself?" Shoto asks. And they wonder briefly if it's like a sort of self-hatred thing. But then don't really explore that any further. You don't need to know. It's on a need-to-know basis.
Yep.
On the second shard, now get ready, there is another riddle, another puzzle.
Oh, God. We haven't even decided what the last one meant yet.
And I tell you what, I'm not going to let you decide yet because I think it's time for some interstitial content. What do we have today?
Perfect. So, we have something interesting for once. No, I'm joking. Of course, everyone loves the interstitial content. We've had so many emails, haven't we, saying like just what
too many to read. That's why.
What great things I'm doing. Yeah. So, but I found something, and I suppose we've got to make a decision. I've sort of alluded to this before to you. We've got to decide quite what to do with it. I'm thinking this could be some bonus content. I'm thinking this could possibly be our next big bad book, although unfortunately it's not that big.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that it might be that for a little while this is going to be a running piece of interstitial content.
Ah, that's exciting.
So let me start this by asking you, Isaac, and of course we know that there is only the one answer. What is the best book ever written?
The Bible is the greatest story ever told.
No.
I suppose the greatest story ever told is not necessarily the best book ever written.
Okay, like what I mean is like, you know, if ever something happens in the world or society and you're like, this is just like
1984.
You're absolutely
George
right.
Orwell's 1984.
But now you see the thing about 1984, what some people don't realize is it was not written in 1984.
Hang on.
It was actually written in 1948.
What? So he swapped
them around, and it was like a sort of future thing, and he was doing a sort of prediction.
Yeah.
And as we can all agree, every single word came true.
All of them. Yeah.
Every single one.
So sometimes it's too true, I think, to myself.
But one thing that I think we've all been missing is the fact that, hang on a minute, this was written in 48, about 84. We're in 22. We can't just keep harking back to a prediction about a past that has already become.
You're saying we need a sequel?
I'm not saying we need one. I'm saying we have one.
Wow. Okay.
And the sequel, it's more of a sort of, it's more of a spiritual successor.
Right.
I would say. It's called Gulag Caledonia.
Okay.
Let me pitch it to you.
Yeah.
By reading this blurb. This is Gulag Caledonia by Dr. That's Dr. Bruce Scott.
Okay, fair enough. Caledonian Scott.
I just can't believe, like, he is, I'm pretty sure, Scottish. And, like, Bruce Scott.
It's a fake name.
Does just feel like it's
Bruce
bullshit,
Highlander Scott.
Yeah.
Scott McShortbread.
A story of a dystopian future Scotland set in 2050.
Whoa.
Now the thing about Scotland in 2050 is it's been ravaged by some things.
What things?
Give me your thoughts on the first two here.
Okay.
Globalism.
Oh yeah. Well, that's already taken its toll.
And gender politics.
Oh my god, you can't move for it on the Highlands.
But then follow it up with this triple whammy: cultural Marxism.
No way.
Biosecurity surveillance and eco-totalitarianism.
That last one's quite distinct from the rest. Like the most of them, in fact, you know, depending on what he means by the last one, or you can't really ravage something with concepts. Like all of these, I was hoping one of them was going to be like bees or robots.
No. But like gender politics, that's pretty much like, I suppose that's worse than bees.
It's a kind of intellectual wildfire.
So yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? And
did it stay above Hadrian's Wall exclusively? Like it hasn't trickled down?
We don't know quite yet. Let's get through some more of this. So this is the story of David, separated from his wife and children by the state.
By gender politics.
So like, it's amazing that like, if you had to like characterize the sort of guy who would write a novel like this,
divorced.
It's the proper like, she's taken the wings from us, and within the first line, the character has had this exact thing.
Also, taken from his wife and kids by the state just sounds like he's in prison.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, he basically is. Oh right, God. His father missing.
The prison of critical race theory.
His father missing, taken by the state years earlier, leaves a huge void in his life. Yeah, David has been fired from his post as a postdoctorate researcher at St Andrews University.
Oh, what gave Dr. Bruce Scott that idea?
For the scare quotes hate crime of voicing supposedly misogynistic views via his research findings.
This, I mean, have you looked into the author? I don't want to preempt anything, but Can we get any little hints as to whether this is?
I'll tell you some stuff about Dr. Bruce Scott in a minute. We'll touch on Dr. Bruce Scott, but I don't want to blow it all now.
Yeah.
The story finds him, and Isaac, tell me if you can imagine anything more horrible.
Go on.
The story finds him on digital universal basic income.
Oh no! They're just giving you Bitcoin.
Living in a soulless tower block in the suburbs of Glasgow, where no real community exists.
Really?
The Scotland of 2050 is essentially an open prison. Wow. Where people are controlled, barred from the countryside, and who have little hope of escape from the totalitarian system.
Why are they barred from the countryside, I wonder?
David is summoned to the State Department of Work and Wellbeing. Now imagine that. You wouldn't want a government who were thinking about well-being, would you?
Fuck that. That's communism.
He's assigned to a compulsory 6-month work and well-being placement at the protein factories on the remote Outer Hebrides of Scotland.
Yes.
What follows is a descent into reminiscence of his long-lost father, his childhood, and philosophical and religious reflections, which act as a critique of the time.
It's good to specify, like to tell us
the themes
that they're going to.
By the way, there are some themes in this book, and here they are.
And they're going to act as a critique of the time.
So, Dr. Bruce Scott, he is on Twitter. You can find him at Dr. Bruce Scott. Psychoanalyst is his job.
Okay.
Did
he get any misogynistic findings in his research that led to him losing a university post?
Now, I've decided not to quite delve that deep just yet because, like I said, I don't want to go.
I'm not saying that did happen. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if that were the case.
But he did 11 hours ago share an article to be or not to be in the new COVID-19 Brave New Normal.
Oh yeah,
that was published on. Tell me if this is an institution you've heard of, the Centre for Male Psychology.com.
That's my homepage.
Tragedy of our times, he said. The lack of male courage in the face of tyranny. COVID-19 restrictions, masks on children, vax passes, vax pushed on pregnant women, eco-totalitarianism, just dropping that one in there again.
I don't know what
World Health Organization treaty / WEF infiltration. Mute. WEF. They should hang their heads in shame, he said.
Wow. I mean, he's right. Like, if we don't stomp down on this today, you and I will be first in line for the protein factory.
That's it. We'll be out there like day one.
I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but it sounds bad.
Well, don't worry. It's not going to be good. So some more about the author. He's a psychologist and psychoanalyst living in Scotland.
Huge.
He works in a private practice in Edinburgh and is the author of Testimony of Experience, Dr. Ignorantia, and the Philadelphia Association Communities.
Boring.
So you can find him. And I thought what I'd do is I just for this little teaser, rather than breaking into the story itself, I'm just going to go through some of the preface for you.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Because here's the thing. It's one of those fun things where the preface is written as if the Scotland of 2050 is real.
Yeah, which I mean, it's not far off.
What you wouldn't want to do is have to do the world building in the story. It's better to just get all the stuff you want to say out the way beforehand and then just like dive right in.
For sure.
So let me tell you some stuff about the Scotland of 2050. Tell me, I suppose my question to you for this is, how do you think Dr. Bruce Scott sees himself? Who do you think he sees himself
as? I'll keep that in mind.
In the year 2050, some 60 years after the collapse of the Iron Curtain, the supposed fall of communism, the warnings to the West from the great Alexander Solzhenitsyn had gone unheeded. Damn. The West had indeed forgotten God.
Whoa, fuck.
That's how it opens. That's powerful stuff.
That is a huge claim. That was a big, big opener.
It turns out that, it had on the surface since the sexual revolution of the 60s and a flurry of Marxist intellectual activity, it seemed like, stuff was going great. But he says again, it had forgotten God.
Oh, he's reiterating that point already.
He said that.
Cool.
Then that's the second paragraph. Then the third paragraph is about how the age of sexual freedom, in scare quotes, coupled with internet access, brackets, which included unlimited availability of pornography, was a destructive force which ate away below the surface, deep in the soul. And you'll never guess what it did. It sowed the seeds of the forgetfulness of God.
No way. Have you got three? Every paragraph has contractually to include the forgetfulness of God.
Pretty much, yes.
That's really cool.
So it turned out that this forgetfulness had reached very far. Parents had given up their most precious gift. That's right, their children.
No.
To be corrupted on every level with indoctrination in sexual matters, e.g., masturbation.
Oh, no. You're not saying teenagers are going to find out about that, are you?
And worse than that, polyamory.
Oh, goodness.
I know. So it turns out that this was, and you'll never have seen this coming. But here's another problem that Dr. Bruce Scott identifies. More importantly, the corruption involved pernicious gender ideology, which inculcated into children as young as 4 or 5 that they could change sex. And parents, in their forgetfulness, dutifully went along with it, were even proud of it, and some even coerced their children to transition and broadcasted this with glee on social media platforms.
Wow.
The delusion reached so deep like a hypnosis, and gender activists would try and convince the world, and themselves no doubt, that doctors assigned the sex of children by announcing at the birth if it was a boy or a girl. And people went along with this, as they had forgotten God.
First they came for the gender ideologists.
Imagine this last sentence. And people went along with this as if they had forgotten God, semicolon. 2 + 2 really did equal 5.
Oh my God. They're getting some of that guy's, the what's his name, teriology involved.
Yeah, exactly.
They should collab.
You wouldn't believe it.
2050, teriology is the only thing on the curriculum, apart from gender.
Marriage, family, and heteronormativity all came under sustained attack in many guises. That's the thing. They came from every angle. It turned out that, you see, parenthood had been expanded and accepted to include, God, I can't even believe I'm saying it, many different types of family, including same-sex parents.
And this is by 2050 this is happening.
By 2050 this is going on. The near future. And then there's a really funny thing where it says, we're including same-sex parents, e.g., 2 women, 2 men, transgender parents, etc. Which, like, to me, it just reads like he thinks that's one couple, but it also sounds like a greasy spoon breakfast order. Yeah, I'll have 2 men, 2 women, 2 trans people. Yeah.
It's not complicated. It didn't need clarification or explanation.
No. Same-sex parents, 2 men, or get this.
Yeah.
Of course, in such cases, a third party would be needed to actually create the child. He says, like in a kind of like snidey way.
Oh yeah.
So he goes on about that. Apparently that was bad. Then there's a great sentence here, especially given that he claims to be a psychoanalyst. It said here, parenthood was placed at such a premium that politicians proudly declared, he's doing fucking Sean Penn alliteration, isn't he? Proudly declared that it should be encouraged to normalize and make acceptable fatherless children, ignoring the evidence that fatherless children had the most problems. Brackets, psychologically speaking.
Do you hear me, Sarah? More problems. Now let me see them on their birthday.
Bring them back, woman! Even more macabre developments of these godless times involve the issue of abortion.
Leave the book.
Are you noticing a theme?
Yeah.
Who's missing from the Scotland of 2050? It's the big man himself.
They've chased him right out of the sky.
There were scenes of celebration after the Irish abortion referendum in 2017, where many women, brackets and men, were screaming and had tears of joy running down their faces when they learned that they had won the right to kill an unborn child.
Fuck me.
And then, so he says that, and then the next sentence, just to hammer home, in other Western countries, there were debates about the need to be able to abort children, brackets, i.e., kill children.
This man's so stupid. Like he can't. I think one of the big signs of someone who's really stupid is that they can't tell what you will understand from what they've said.
Yeah, exactly.
He can't imagine what it's like to get this sentence for the first time.
But it's a specific form of stupidity that belongs only to people who think that they are extreme intellects. It's like what I'm saying is so complex that I will have to reiterate it.
Same-sex couple, it means man, for example.
By the way, just a reminder, there's no God. He's gone. Yeah. God is gone. No one remembers him.
He's honestly the least forgotten character in the book so far.
Yeah.
Coming up in every other sentence.
Yeah. So then you wouldn't believe it, psychoanalyst Bruce Scott, he goes on a rant against mental health culture.
No.
That's bad. Yep. He seems to he seems to lament the fact that many of the left were encouraged by historical developments from the 1960s, for the likes of anti-critical psychiatry movement, to make mental health treatment more humane and ethical. Lobotomies and electroshock became rare or even obsolete. Mental health hospitals were closed.
A Scotland that's full of lobotomies. Is that his dream?
Yeah, and
no one be able to remember God. Just half their brains hanging out.
And imagine a more horrifying future than this. Mental health hospitals were closed to be replaced with, quote, care in the community.
Stop. Not my Scotland.
It truly was
not an open air name.
It truly was an open air prison
full of care in the community. You said there was no community in it.
The development leading on from this was a huge industry, with the birth of new psychiatric diagnoses and new drugs to treat those diagnoses.
This is just too boringly specific to his domain. He's completely dispensed with any idea that this is a general critique. This is just a man who's annoyed about one boring, wrong take on psychology as a field.
This is the thing, is that he reminds me so much of Klein in the way that he writes. The constant reference to Middletown, Ohio. Do you remember that we're in Middletown, Ohio? Yeah. Do you remember the robes of Anorak? Anorak's robes, they could do this. Just God, he's gone. God is dead. God's dead.
This book will be full of references to famous. It'll be the Milgram experiment, reference with the year.
I've already skipped some of those. He likes to name drop shit. He talks about the Frankfurt School and all of this. So obviously, we've only just recovered from the horror of care in the community and
I'm still
and progress in psychology. Said that Scotland's got the highest rate of antidepressant prescriptions in Europe. The cause of this problem lay in the rise of therapy culture and the manufacturing of mental health victims. You see, Isaac, you might not know this, but when one lives in a world which has forgotten God, one only has recourse to man as an object.
This man loves God.
And any suffering one encounters has to be faced with recourse to amelioration at any cost. So with recourse to amelioration at any cost, which is a sentence that means something.
Yeah. I understand the meaning, and I bet you do as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I tell you what, Dr. Bruce, he super does.
And imagine, again, just... It's there was such a great tweet the other day. I think it might be one of my favorite ever, just for the sheer incredible economy of language, which was everyone's favorite Eve Barlow had done a tweet about how Israel murdered a journalist, a Palestinian journalist, and she said she tweeted saying, the human rights world loves to jump to the conclusions about, Israel doing X, Y, Z. And someone had quote tweeted it saying, positioning myself in opposition to something I call the human rights world, which is so really good. And this is the exact same energy here, where he starts a sentence by saying, psychic well-being, therefore, became a cult. So everyone wanted a piece. People were obsessed with wanting to be well. A whole industry of saviors was born on offering, quote, trauma-informed healing. Everybody could be identified as having trauma. Yes.
What aspect of psychiatry, what part does this professional? What is he trying to take it down from the inside? He got his doctorate on how to destroy, how to unpack 100 years of.
He works only on the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. That's the only bit he does.
He's desperate to find the psychology of how we can ensure that no one could ever forget God. Well, where is that memory located?
Now I think it's funny you should say that. Because everybody could be identified as having trauma, and in turn the manufacturing of passive victims became a cultural phenomenon. Nobody can resist such a career path when it's the only solution to a world where God has been forgotten.
He has, hasn't he?
So
this book is possibly an experiment. I think he might be. It's got the vibe of Derren Brown sort of slipping things into a conversation. I will now never forget God. And I guess in that sense, Dr. Bruce has been successful.
I couldn't if I tried. Yeah.
Honestly.
Don't think of an elephant kind of vibe. Yeah. Now, we're near the end of the preface. You'll be probably disappointed to know. But there are a couple more things. Now, here's some other things that he's annoyed about. Well, actually, let's do a kind of almost like a checklist. See is there anything that hasn't come up so far that you think might?
Well, I'm sort of expecting some kind of attack on multiculturalism to become a bit more prominent, because he says God, and I know which one he means. I think we all do. And I wonder if he's going to think that certain bad faith actors are standing in the way of remembering the right God. And yeah, so I would expect there to be some kind of like Islamophobic kind of undertone. I'd probably expect a little bit more about they just love the idea of the humanity is ruining everyone's access to becoming the person that they should be.
Yeah.
So like some more like STEM baby shit like in there somewhere. I don't know.
You'll be pleased to know that like somehow I'm fairly certain that in this preface at least he does manage to avoid the Islamophobia.
That's good. I guess that's more of a chapter 2 thing.
On your second count, like you will all be very pleased to know that there is another mention of cultural Marxism, which is basically, that's
an anti-Semitic way of saying teaching English.
Yes, yeah, it's an anti-Semitic way of saying the humanities.
Yeah,
isn't it? Yeah. Now the next one, you sort of failed to mention this one, although I suppose it could come under the anti-multiculturalism angle that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Ironically, the aforementioned burgeoning mental health industry rose in tandem with an increase in male suicide rates.
Yes,
especially amongst young men, aided and abetted by and then okay, so there's an interesting use of brackets here, which he's done to avoid making the racism obvious.
Oh, okay.
Right. See, now, if he'd just said anti-white, like that's plain as day.
Yeah.
No one could confuse that. But what he's done instead is he's said anti brackets often white, close brackets, men and boys agenda.
Right. Yeah. Often is the difference between, going
racism and
going full clan and just being one of the great authors.
Yeah, it's the difference between racism and what we might call legitimate concerns.
Yeah.
The mainstream media and social media were awash with the pernicious narrative of toxic masculinity, of how men and boys were intrinsically flawed and how their masculine essence needed to be rooted out and changed to become more feminine.
They're going to, in chapter 5, they're going to come out with a new government mandated type of kilt that doesn't let you man spread.
It's got like really an iron bar in the middle. Yeah. Bearing the banner of desiring equality, in reality, it became a war against men and boys, a veritable game of top trumps on any issue, from wages to sexual pleasure. The twisting of words to fit statistics. There were twisting of words and statistics to fit any feminist narrative.
The gender pay gap
became almost an art form, and it led to mass unconscious incorporation of believing the lie without question that men and boys were bad, toxic, and that women were victims.
And that God was not there.
God had indeed been forgotten.
This is funny, isn't it? Because at some point, if you were someone who sort of held this worldview that, everything's going to shit because of the left, essentially, is what this all boils down to, right? Because of projects in varying forms which seek to make the world a bit nicer for more people.
But like at the expense of decency and
at the expense
culture.
of Dr. Bruce and his marital integrity
and indeed
his ability to see his kid.
Unless we forget God.
Yeah, and God. I did forget. I fucking did forget. That's on me. If you were writing all of this from that position and you sort of read it back to yourself and you were like, I've written all of this in a fictional story, like it's written in that weird tense where like it had all of this, like it's sort of fake history. Like at some point, would you not be like, none of this has happened. Yeah, none of it at all.
It does have the cadence of a Twilight Zone introduction, isn't it?
Yeah.
Scotland 2050.
And the thing about Rod Serling is when he would be like, and there was a special kind of alien that was chasing men around the swamp. He wasn't then mad about the thing he just made up in real life. He wasn't like, fuck, that fucking alien.
Yeah, it turned out the trans people have banned all sorts of things.
Whereas this guy is just doing the thing of making up things to be mad about.
Making up a guy, to be furious about.
It's really, really silly.
Now, another thing that you failed to predict, Isaac, that I think you'll be
I thought phones was another one I was going to suggest might be in there at some point.
Phones? Like, phones are bad?
Everyone's on their phones too much these days. But I think that's probably captured under the pornography angle.
You've missed the wood for the trees. Alongside these issues was the thorn of free speech.
Oh, yeah, well, of course.
It became almost impossible to speak about these issues in a critical way.
You couldn't publish bullshit, self-published books about Scottish gulags.
Without being laughed at for being backward, for being a bigot or fascist or phobic of some kind, which is a great phrase.
A fascist or phobic.
A deep paralysis crept into the psyche of peoples.
Whoa, peoples.
Peoples. Wow. A darkness that, just dropping this in again, Solzhenitsyn experienced in his home country of Russia during
in the only book I've ever read.
Yeah, in the only book I've ever read, Solzhenitsyn raved against trans culture and the scourge of gender ideology.
Page book about a Russian man in prison. I mean, if you read between the lines,
it's all about my wife taking the kids and the state, of course. For example, was one politically correct? Was one being inclusive and diverse enough in one's thinking? And was one assessing the risk about certain issues enough? Like all of these things are just issues.
What boring phrase.
Like all this is like, was someone thinking before they spoke? Was someone considering others?
Were they looking both ways before crossing the road?
No. Now here you go. You were right. Again, as a barometer of the times, social media was extremely informative.
Oh, not
people were wary in person of saying the wrong thing, or were blatantly frightened of committing
online,
a crime.
They'll leave 1-star reviews about my book.
But the cowards refused to come to my house and fight me. Scarily, it went in the other direction. Some people openly defended the destruction of the biological unity of the family, killing children at 9 months gestation, championing puberty blockers and invasive surgical procedures for children to change sex, teaching about pornography to children in schools, burning books written by white men, white guilt, toxic masculinity, and the demonization of men and boys.
We didn't start the fire.
J.K. Rowling. It was like the bullies had taken over the world, and if one put up a fight, one quickly found out that the authorities were on the side of the bully.
Wow, so you said bullies and then bully. That's good. Yeah. That's elegant.
Yeah. That's someone who's never looked at anything that happened in the world.
Yeah.
This was aptly demonstrated by campaigns to stop sending women to prison for committing crimes, brackets, even though women comprised only 5% of the prison population, by not treating criminals as criminals, but by treating them as victims of childhood adversity, as if the casualty for individual cases could be shown, and by allowing an obnoxious, vacuous, social justice discourse reign without let or hindrance, which was as godless as they come. If one challenged this discourse, ridicule was the main remedy.
Oh no, not ridicule.
Yeah.
No. That's what they have in gulags, isn't it? They're just penned in by ridicule. If you try and eat enough food or leave, they just laugh at you until you stay.
They do a very mean satirical cartoon about you.
You want more bread?
You get lampooned in the gulag newspaper. Then there are 3 paragraphs left, and the first 2 of those paragraphs each starts with some of the most incredible sentences of all time.
Okay.
The penultimate, this anti-penultimate paragraph starts with, obviously there was the COVID-19 thing, with thing in quotation marks, a great opportunity for those in power to accelerate. But now this is in the past.
Now this is in the real past. He's just sort of commingling things that have happened. Is this not supposed to be from the perspective of someone in 2050 charting how we got to 2050?
Yeah.
So why would you be talking about fictional developments and then fleshing in COVID-19?
Because obviously those fictional developments were the result of the accelerated power grab.
Did the COVID-19, did the pandemic advance the aims?
That's exactly what it was. It was a political overreach to usher in a globalist technocratic totalitarianism, a global panopticon where ordinary people became livestock.
Oh, I see. And we forgot.
You probably forgot
when they gave you the vaccine. I noticed that one of the side effects right at the bottom was you might forget about Jesus Christ.
You might forget about the panopticon.
Yeah.
Then we're coming now into the summary, and I think it begins helpfully because sometimes when you read a text as vast, as broad, as sweeping, as this preface, it's easy to forget the details and it's easy to forget the little things. So it's nice to have those things sort of summed up for you. So as he says here, ultimately, God had been forgotten and consigned
Bruce, whatever you're called,
and consigned to the historical dustbin. This was the ultimate objective the cultural Marxist war on the West.
Why?
It drove people underground. Some were driven underground to hide, which is great. Others were driven underground because they were mole fetishists. Others were driven there by public shaming and juridical process where witch hunts and lynch mobs did the master's bidding.
Whoa.
This is the background. The scene is set, which frames the stories from the Gulag Caledonia. This is a possible story about Scotland.
It's not possible.
A dystopian future in a time not long from here.
That is amazing.
Time not long from here, not now, is a very incredibly funny and stupid thing to say.
It's to be a fly on the wall when Sarah Scott finally had enough, packed her bags, took the kids and was on her way out, and I'm gonna make sure that neither of them remember God not one time in their life, and this stuck with him forever.
It's so funny because this I don't want to be a cynic, but it does feel like a bit of projection on
just
his part.
A touch,
but it's just very funny that it being projection is just when she does eventually take him to court for official custody, this preface is all she needs to submit. Yeah. That's it.
Honestly, he's done himself.
Even the most reactionary of judges will immediately grant the custody.
Yeah.
And rightly so.
For sure.
We'll hear more from Dr. Bruce Scott and David and the realm of Gulag Caledonia in
the Wokarati.
Weeks.
That's very exciting. What a tease. Couple of weeks and we'll be back at it. Now, first piece of news before we dive back in. We've reached 50%. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank my parents.
Here we go!
And at once I feel a sense of glee to have made it this far, but now I realise that there's as far still to go. So, it's a mixed blessing.
Yeah.
Let's not fuck around. Here's the riddle. Recast the foul, restore his ending. Andy's first fate still needs mending. It's gone for a kind of it's got a sort of mischievous rhyme scheme here. Recast the foul, restore his ending. Andy's first fate still needs mending. What am I?
It's got, Answer me these riddles 3 and the other side
naughty gremlin vibes. Andy is spelled ANDIE, which is going to be very important.
Stop.
Now, here is a little game we can play where we wonder, is Ernest Cline, to what extent is the self-awareness about to be demonstrated? Because what happens here, Shoto locks in on a few theories. Andy's first fate, Shoto repeated. Wasn't Andy the name of Kerry Green's character in the Goonies? That one gets ruled out. Okay. No, it turns out that was spelled ANDY.
I know that. I know I did an intake of breath, but I was about to say
you knew. You were like, no, how could he have made that error?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So ANDIE is they're like Andy McDowell. Oh shit, maybe the next shard is on the planet Punxsutawney. I used to go there every Groundhog Day too. And then Shoto's like, hold on. And he's they're in a kind of flow state. He's like, hold on. And this. Andy McDowell also starred in Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan in 1984. But the director hired Glenn Close to loop all of her dialogue because he didn't like her southern accent. Do you think that could be what Recast the Foul, Restore His Ending is reference to? Maybe that film had an alternate ending. Wait, are we talking about the movie where Connor McLeod plays Tarzan, H said, directed by the cat who made Chariots of Fire? That's the one. And they're just going crazy.
The cat?
Yeah, I don't know why that's come back in.
Hey, wasn't that directed by the cat who made Chariots of Fire?
Guys.
I tell you, there was some broads in that movie.
Wade is like, enough, shut the fuck up. I signaled a timeout with my hands. Come on, you're really reaching. Do you seriously believe the third child's hiding place is somehow connected to Andy McDowell or Tarzan? Neither one's mentioned in the almanac or in any of the books I've read about Kira's life. Now, pause for a moment, because what I thought when I read that was is this Ernest kind of lampooning his own style, where normally the first thing they think of is not only correct, but might also not be evidenced yet in anything, but they're going to discover it within one sentence. Oh, but wait, on the secret Appendix 4C, he does say
these
Tarzan.
Pages were stuck together. I've been jacking it to his description of Kira.
What he has described here, the kind of vitriol and the the ridicule that's coming from Wade. It's dripping with like, come on, you're really reaching.
You fucking like
the whole story is based on reaches.
Don't be a fucking mug all your life, says Wade.
And it's kind of crazy. Like, either this is a good kind of meta joke from Klein, where he's like, look, lol, I know that I do this all the time, and this is exactly how the story is held together by making ridiculous connections that are 100% of the time right. Or he doesn't I think it's actually this. This one's wrong because another character came up with it. But if Wade had said it was this, it would have been that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. He listen, one of the clues was already found out by some fucking woman who lived in a slum who he had to pay $1 billion to. He can't afford another L like someone else coming up with the answer before him again. Like, that's it. Like, it's the ultimate shame because Wade he's a white guy, right?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah, he's a white guy. He's the one who's got to, and he's very rich.
Yeah,
he's a very rich white guy, so he has to solve
it. So look, they throw that aside. They're like, H and Shoto are fair enough, kind of deflated by the whole thing. They're like, oh, that's a bit sad. The way we just got shouted down by the boss. I was still mulling that over. Okay, sorry, specifically what he's mulling over is he's thinking about these like times he's possessed Kira, and he's like, what is that? Because you remember at the beginning he described all these different annoyingly termed, like there were the memory ones, there were the Sims, there was the Rex, like all of this bullshit. He's like, it's none of those basically. Right. So what was it? And here is a great example of kind of call and response, question answer, no time to allow it to seep in or for us to think about it. So what had I just experienced? I was still mulling that over when my brain produced a match for the name Andy. And so now he's solved who Andy is. It's Andy Walsh, which is Molly Ringwald's character in Pretty in Pink. And we know that they're going to have to go to the John Hughes planet very soon.
The John really Hughes planet. Can I just say, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in a bit.
No. Come on.
That is the stupidest thing.
You get to play Ferris Bueller. You get to play Home Alone there.
The very idea
Breakfast Club?
The John Hughes planet.
It's called Sherma.
The John Hughes planet.
Yeah, it's really good.
Stop this.
Pretty in Pink had a different ending originally where Andy ended up with Ducky instead of Blaine, remember?
Oh, who could forget?
And Artie did an essay about it, Art3 Miss in Artie's Missives. And then they're just like lolling about that. Like, oh my God, she's such a dork.
Artie's Missives?
Yeah, I don't know why. Artemis,
it was one of her many treaties.
Yeah. Artemis appears and grins at them, admiring our old school Gunter attire. And then she does a snap and a twirl, and now she's in her old Gunter attire, which is described in extreme detail, but I don't want to know about it.
Wait. Hang on.
Go on.
So she's back in?
She's back in temporarily, but remember, she can go in and out.
Oh, because it's only the Oni. Sorry. That's my bad.
The reason she jumped out was to get to a new hiding place as well.
Was to jump out of a plane.
Yeah. Well, and also to avoid, not to actually not avoid a plane crashing into her, but to get medical treatment.
Yeah.
Here's a horrible sentence. So Wade is looking at his ex-girlfriend now dressed in like the outfit her avatar wore when they fell in love. And he says, seeing her dressed like that again brought back a flood of old feelings and long suppressed memories. They left me feeling momentarily lightheaded, which is a phrase I know, and then followed by one I don't, and weak-hearted. Weak-hearted. That's just medical. That's not like...
Yeah.
I think normally when you feel like great passion, your heart feels stronger than ever. That's my experience. There's our girl back in uniform, H said, and they did a double high five, which is very cool.
Whoa.
And then you'll remember we had that question of like mulling over, what is all this memory? Not to cut the celebration short, I said, but I think I may have figured out what the Siren's soul is and why Arg refused to give it to Anorak. We're about to get a big revelation. Would you be interested in predicting it at all, or should we just get straight into
it? He's going to say that keep
in mind the Siren Soul is going to account for what is happening in these weird memories as well.
The Siren Soul is it's like they call it the God cock block. And it's what it is it's like this it's like the Holy Spirit, you know, the Trinity.
Yeah.
Well, there's the Father. Now that's
there's God, there's Jesus, and there's Moses.
And then there's
and they all shake hands.
Now you see, you've got it all wrong. There's God, there's Jesus. Yeah. Now you've got kind of some idea of what they sort of look like. But then there's this thing, the Holy Spirit.
Mysterious.
And the Siren Shard is basically the Holy Spirit of stopping Mark Rylance from fucking this girl.
I mean, it is exactly that. Imagine.
Yes!
Now, Wade poses a question to the group. He's doing a cool thing here where, for the first time in the whole book, I guess Klein is thinking about pacing and thinking about, this has been the central mystery. Find 7 shards of the Siren Soul. And so he's not just... Normally, Wade would just say, oh, I've just realized what it is. Here's what it is. But this time, he's going to draw out a tad. Only 5 lines, but it's at least a little bit more than we're
used to. He's 50% of the way in. He's figured it's time to address the story.
So he's like, blah, blah, blah. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think Halliday called it the Siren Soul? And then Shoto's like, oh, it's because of that D&D character that Kira had that was called Lucosia, who is one of the sirens in Greek myth. Correct, I said. So, if Kira's the siren, and the 7 shards are fragments of her soul, siren, fragments, and soul all had scare quotes around them, which I really like. What does Anorak assume will happen when we put those pieces back together? When we once again make the siren whole? Art 3 Miss looked back over at me. Holy shit, Wade, she muttered. You don't think... I nodded. Anorak doesn't think that the Siren Soul is a magical artifact named after Kira, I said. He believes it is her, an AI copy of Kira, just like Anorak is a copy of Halliday. Come on, ZH said, that's impossible. I thought so too, I replied, but there is no other explanation for what I've been experiencing. And that is about as much detail as we get.
That is as much reason. Now, here's my question.
Go on.
Here's my question.
You were blown away, first of all, just to check in.
Sorry, I was so bored because I think we'll probably assume that was what it was. But anyway, what I was going to say was that if this is the case, why did he set it up as a big riddle rather than just putting them together?
Who? Halliday?
Yeah.
I guess, we don't know. I guess there must have been a reason that he wanted it not to happen. Like maybe...
It was probably one of those... it's probably one of those good reasons, like at the end, in that last second, it just didn't work.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
It could be that they didn't have the technology to bring her back properly yet, and she had to stay in fragments or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
what if it was because he was simply incapable of beating Ninja Sega?
Yeah. So H pops off about Halliday. She's like, "What the fuck? What is he doing? There's no way he could have convincingly recreated all of her memories. He didn't know anything about women. He was a self-obsessed sociopath, incapable of feeling empathy for anyone else, especially Kira." And Wade says, I had to bite my tongue to prevent myself from leaping to Halliday's defense. The man had been far from perfect, but he'd given us our entire world. Sociopath didn't just seem harsh, but downright blasphemous. Quite a similar tone to Dr. Bruce.
So you're saying Wade doesn't believe women?
Yeah,
okay,
that is
cool,
the vibe.
Cool.
Now, someone raises a question of sort of technicality here. There's like, but what you're suggesting can't be possible, Z. The Oasis neural interface didn't exist back in the 80s when Kira was a teenager. So he's like, how could they have made this AI version? And Wade says, I know, it doesn't jibe with the official timeline, but no one was better at keeping secrets than Halliday. And that's as much as we get.
Again, that's very good.
Also, every secret Halliday's had, he seems to have written down. And or made the subject of a worldwide treasure hunt to expose that secret.
Yeah.
So I just don't accept that characterization of him.
Well, there's got to have been a couple. There's got to have been a couple.
Now, it gets pretty murky here because you remember that this chapter started with that cock blockery.
Yeah.
And a kind of like, I don't know, a sort of latent inceldom from Halliday. Well, try this on for size. What they realize is that Kira would never have allowed Halliday to... I guess kind of image her whole consciousness to make a digital version because she'd know he was going to fuck it.
Normal, yeah.
She'd know that Halliday would be cyberjacking himself,
dicking down 24/7.
So maybe Halliday figured out a way to scan Kira without her or Og realizing it. I swallowed as I realized what I was about to say. Halliday was obsessed. He knew he could never have the real Kira, so he decided to make a copy of her for himself. Hold up, H interjected. Kira was madly in love with Og, so why would he want to make a copy of her? If it was a true copy, it wouldn't love him either. I know, I said. But the copy would also never grow old or die, I added. Maybe Halliday thought he could convince her, to fall in love with him over time.
It would never get old or die. And that guy had a sick fetish where all he wanted was to be rejected forever.
But what an absolute madness of a plan they're revealing this to be about. I nodded. I was starting to feel sick to my stomach, like I just learned my childhood idol and hero had been a serial killer in his spare time.
He had robes that let him perv on everyone that you yourself used. How is this a surprise?
We can't linger on that too long because there's 5 more shards to find. Oh, fuck. Artemis's smile vanished. She replaced it with a fiercely competitive scowl that I recognized from the days of Halliday's contest. She called this putting her game face on, which is just
a new phrase that she invented.
Hey, Wade, I've coined something. I want to try it on with you. So, she said, turning to face me, lay it on me, Ace. Where are we headed? Your old stomping grounds, I replied. Shermer, Illinois. End of chapter. So next chapter, we're going to be on the planet Shermer, which is the fictional town in Illinois where all of the John Hughes verse takes place. And I think you're going to love it big time. I've already read the first page, and let me just pre-warn you.
Reference aplenty?
It's irreverent. It's reference heavy.
That's my favourite of the Netflix adjectives. Yeah, yes. It's going to be big. Oh, that's great news.
So it's a huge chapter. I mean, there's almost too many revelations for any one of them to make me feel anything or care.
Yeah, to be relevant to me or my life or my emotional well-being. Yeah.
Which is cool. I think that's a device. I think that's its own sort of thing. It's because it must be overwhelming in the moment to focus on all of these things happening over and over again.
Too many.
Now, speaking of lots of things happening over and over again, we stream, don't we, over on Twitch?
Oh, we do.
Why don't you tell people about that?
It's over at twitch.tv/shamecity, or if you like things like a little quirky, a little like backwards, if you're like Jim Carrey's character from The Mask.
Oh my God.
Somebody stop him. Then you might go to shame.city/Twitch, which is like,
and it'll get you there.
You go to the same place. We're there Monday to Thursday, mostly 9-ish to 11-ish.
Yeah,
on those
sometimes
days.
Longer.
It's good. We're doing all sorts. We've been doing cryptic crosswords. We've got puzzle games. We've got indie games. We've got Pokemons. We've got all sorts happening over there. We also do another podcast. Let me tell you, if you like hearing about the toilet, that's the podcast for you. It's called That's a Shame.
I've got a topic for our next episode as well, which I'm just going to tease here. Yeah. It really delves into the kind of experience Wade would be having as he jumped into all these bodies. I'll leave it there.
That's great. I'm excited for that. So there you go, like a little tease of that. That you can find That's a Shame. That's everywhere that you can get podcasts. Yeah. Pretty much everywhere that you can get podcasts.
All the best places.
Or you can just head to the website, shame.city, for all of our stuff. If you like our things, you can also head to Discord. That's shame.city/Discord, where there's lots of lovely people having a lovely time, lots of chats, lots of fun content that we find from and collate from all over.
Yeah, it's really good.
Tim Berners-Lee's internet.
His big web. That's all the main ones. I think we've got a Twitter, Shame City Gang, or Big Bad Books.
And we've also got a Patreon where we do a sort of a more improvised, a more free-form show than the obviously very meticulously planned one that you've just heard, called Cups. That's patreon.com/Shame City.
We take on the role of creator rather than critic in that one. And that's a really nice reversal.
We put ourselves on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To create amazing art every week. Now, until the next episode, and it's going to be a fun one, let me just tell you, we look forward to Shermer, Illinois.
Yeah.
I've been Isaac. I've been
Declan.
Don't forget about God.
Don't get in the gulag.